Welcome. We're having fun up here tonight in the SHN Sports. Actually, it's the Georgetown Jewelry Broadcast Studio. Michael, we better get that right. Ricky Poe deserves his sponsorship. We appreciate all that Ricky Poe, Georgetown Jewelry. Thank you, Ricky, for your sponsorship.
Absolutely.
As always, SHN Gridiron live here on a Wednesday night as I'm getting my wires situated back here. Michael, you already got yours pre-situated.
I tried to.
The old situation, as we say here. Well, friends, thanks for joining us. SHN Gridiron here. It is our weekly high school preview show. Michael, this is week number 4, even though we're in the 3rd week. This is our 4th week already, man.
I know it. It's moving right along with a pretty good clip.
Have we really been doing this for a month now?
We have.
It's just unbelievable how much time flies when you're having fun with your good friends.
That's what I say, buddy.
You know, it's went quick. So we've had a lot of really awesome guests on the show since we've started here 4 weeks ago. And, you know, as the show goes on and as the season goes on, we're going to have students come on here, you know, some players. We'll talk to them, some student athletes. We'll continue to have guests. Tonight we're very honored as we have 2 guests tonight. I didn't get to much to promote the show tonight, but we've got 2 guests tonight. One of those, Mr. Mark Champ from the Austin American-Statesman, who does such a wonderful job covering a lot of local student athletes here. He does a lot for Georgetown, a lot throughout Central Texas. So I reached out to Mark, and Mark said I would gladly be on the show. He's also offered to help us with our SHN Player of the Week committee. So that'll be nice to have some really legitimate media guys such as Mark. He does a wonderful job, man.
Right, sure.
So we'll have him on the show tonight. We'll talk to Carl Schoening tonight, my best friend and co-founder of SHN Sports. So looking forward to talking to Carl and just a little bit about his journey with high school football and broadcasting in general. That's it really for the guests tonight. We'll have 2 on. We'll preview upcoming games. We'll go back and look at last week. But we'll start things off this week. The SHN Sports Player of the Week presented by Georgetown Jewelry was none other than Cedar Creek's Ty Pruitt, as Cedar Creek went 2-0 for the first time in school history starting out. They have never been 2-0. That was a great start for the Eagles.
Oh, it's a great start by the Eagles. They've got some great talent over there. They got a couple of D1 prospects playing for the team, and just exciting to see when a team starts out as a program as they did and struggled through the years, and then they finally turn that corner and are able to become one of the respected teams of the area, not just the district, but of the area.
Yeah, and you talk about a team that's, you know, the school itself isn't, you know, too old of a school. They've been around for a while. I mean, or they're not too old of a school. Yeah, they've been around for a little while, but when you compare on the grand scope of things, Cedar Creek High School, now, it hasn't really been around a heck of a long time. You know, a lot of our schools have been here for decades. You talk about a Cedar Creek school that's been here, I don't know, maybe around 10 years or so, a little bit longer, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think they started in 2010.
So in 2010, so almost 10 years, you know, 9 years ago. In fact, the very first broadcast that I ever had was over at Cedar Creek High School broadcasting a basketball game, and it was horrible.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was the worst. So I'm going to tell any aspiring broadcasters, your first 100 broadcasts are going to be horrible, and you will get better and better through each one, though.
Yes, you will.
Just letting you know, that's what's going to happen. So, but yeah, so we're very excited for Ty. He got that award. Of course, we go back to week 1. That award went to Colson over at Eastview. Jake Colson? Jackson Colson. Sorry about that. Jackson Colson. That's right. And hey, man, you and Travis been having fun over at Eastview under head coach Jared Feacoch. The Eastview Patriots win yet again. They are 2-0. Talk a little bit about them, Michael.
2-0, man. What an outstanding game. It was a homecoming game, and you know what a distraction that homecoming festivities can be to a football team during the game. They came out and played like a man on fire, and they were up at one point 41-14 over Canyon, and you know, they kind of started letting their guard down a little bit, and Canyon able to crawl back into the game and made it interesting, but Eastview walks away with it 41-35, almost similar to the same score that they had versus Westwood, 42-35 in an overtime victory. But the thing that's really starting to manifest itself is Eastview plays with a lot of two-way players. They don't have a huge varsity roster, so they have several players that play both ways across the ball. So over the progression of the game, you're starting to see maybe a little fatigue starting to play into it. But I tell you what, Coach Feacoch has those guys excited, believing in the program, believing in what his vision is, and playing for the man, and they're doing an outstanding job.
You know, it was a great opportunity to meet with him before the season actually started. I got to know him, of course, from San Saba. He told me great stories of San Saba. You know who's from San Saba, none other than Tommy Lee Jones. And so
Right, yeah.
I got to hear about Tommy Lee and his interaction with the community there at San Saba. Funny stories. But just meeting with Coach Feacock early in the season, there was and no disrespect to anyone who's been through the program there, but you need a fresh breath of air sometimes, and Coach Feacock has brought that. He has really elevated, in my opinion, that program. I know we're only through 2 games, but that second game of the season is always one of the most important games for any program at any level, especially in football, especially, I learned that in college, but even in high school, because you start to really gauge and see where your team's going to be. Now, at the high school level, you can scrimmage against other teams before your season really gets going. Mm-hmm. It's very important at the college level, game number 2, because by game 2, you're starting to find some rhythm, because in college, you don't scrimmage against other teams. So Game 1 is when you're first putting on the real boy pads, if you will. So in college, it is a little bit more important, but in high school, I take that same philosophy and bring it down to game 2. You start to find your rhythm. We've seen it now with Georgetown. I'll talk about them in a little bit, but we've definitely seen it in Eastview through these first 2 games, and Westwood was a powerful opponent to open week 1.
You're absolutely right, and it's becoming more and more like that in high school, Rob, because high school programs, typically had 2 or 3 scrimmages prior to starting the regular season, and now they only have 1 scrimmage, and that was it. And then the very next week, the season starts up. So that's becoming more and more like the college level in that regard. So it's very important to get those games underneath you. And Eastview doing an outstanding job against 2 Class 6A opponents in New Braunfels Canyon and Westwood. And Westwood comes back and they even up their season 1-1 as they defeat Austin High.
Yeah, you talk about 6A football teams. I had our weekly coaches show, the Eagle Nation coaches show, just a little bit earlier tonight. That's one reason sometimes we get started a little bit after 8:30, because we're wrapping up that coaches show there at Berger University in Georgetown. But talking to Coach as well, and I asked him that question. I said, there's 6A opponents that you guys are playing. What is that like playing a bigger school? And he goes, well, we try to seek quality opponents, but we also want to seek opponents that we really feel we have a good chance of winning. We're not going to go out and try to find the biggest battle of the state of Texas. He joked around, so we're not going to go out and play the Dallas Cowboys on our week 1.
Right.
But they want to have a good shot at winning, and it doesn't diminish. They want to find teams that they feel that they can beat so they can really have some momentum and some rhythm, but they also want to play quality opponents, and not to diminish those. But you go up against teams like Waco, who last year – kind of started out iffy. We play them here this year, a better team this year, but Georgetown easily defeats Waco just this past Friday, 35-7. I was blessed with the opportunity to be on that call for Georgetown. And then you look ahead to this coming up week as we talk a little bit about Georgetown. They faced the South San Bobcats. Last year, the Bobcats really a team that was, let's just face it, they weren't very good. They went 2-8. They struggled. This year, they start out 2-0. They're looking very solid. They come off against a good win versus Harlingdale last week. And so Georgetown this season, they're facing those same opponents as part of the 2-year package deal, but both of those teams have improved, and I'm excited to see what the Eagles do on Friday. It's going to be good. Carl Schoening will be on that call with David England.
It's going to be a good call and a good game. And I mean, Georgetown is one of those close-knit communities that rallies behind their high school teams, and Eagle Fight never dies, right? And that's on T-shirts. It's all over the campus, and the kids believe it, and just a good close-knit community around Georgetown Eagle football and Georgetown Eagle sports in general. So outstanding atmosphere in Georgetown today. To me, it's reminiscent, having grown up in a small community. It's reminiscent of still a small community feel on Fridays here in Georgetown.
Well, there's a lot of folks in the media world in the Austin area, as I've talked about over the past 5 years, as we've been blessed with the opportunity to grow SHN. to get to make many friends and meet many wonderful folks. We've had Sean Clinch on the show before. We've talked to Mike Barnes offside of the show. I asked Mike if he'd like to be on one of these shows. He goes, absolutely. If I've got time, I would love to. And so you talk about guys, Chris De La Pena over at Fox and Bob Lou over at Channel 42 there with CBS. All of these Austin media guys do such great work. One of them that I've got to know a little bit over the years, a little bit better each game that I see him, is a good friend here of SHN and a gentleman that I respect a lot. He does such great work for the Austin American-Statesman, Mr. Mark Champ, who is joining us on the phone tonight. And let me crank this down for just a second, and we will get Mark here. Mark, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Rob.
Hey, Mark. Well, good to have you. I know that I reached out to you yesterday and just wanted to have you on our weekly show because, as I said just a few moments ago, it's been a pleasure, Mark, getting to know you over the years and see the fine work that you do covering these kids throughout Central Texas. It's not just football, man. You seem like you're all over the map, my friend.
Well, I try. They give me the opportunity to do some baseball, softball, and some basketball. One of these days they may have me at a volleyball match.
Yeah, and so, you know, I've seen you, the majority of where I've been able to get to know you, Mark, is, you know, with Georgetown baseball. I know that this is a football show, but talk about how special that's been covering the baseball Eagles.
Well, I grew up in Northwest Iowa, and my dad was a sports writer, and one of the things he used to do is take me to baseball games, covering games, me scoring games, and got a lot of opportunity to see a lot of quality baseball, not just high school baseball in that area, but had some opportunities to go up to like Minnesota to watch the Twins back in the day, and covering baseball down here when the Statesman gave me the opportunity to do some reporting instead of just sitting in the office. I jumped at it, and I always liked watching a baseball game. So relaxing, but also so intense, and making sure that I'm giving the readers an impression of what's going on and do the best of my ability, and also making sure the kids are the ones that are the focus of the story.
Awesome. Well, you just brought up a point that I was going to mention is, you know, just reading your coverage and seeing you there, you always talk about these kids. How special is it for you as a sports correspondent there for the Statesman to be able to go out and see these kids, especially this upcoming football season? It looks like we're shaping up to have a good football season yet again here in Central Texas, Mark.
It is, and what I'm really amazed at, because when I was in high school, and that was obviously a long time ago, back in the 70s, it didn't seem like the kids were that big, but they're just so much farther athletically than the kids I grew up with and what seemed to be in the training methods. And you really get to see that, and the fact that every athlete I've interviewed speaks their mannerisms, the way they carry themselves speaks so highly for their programs. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed this spring, especially on Georgetown's road to the state tournament, was getting to interact with that team and Coach Dean. And Coach Dean, I know, put a lot of work into the culture and the family culture at Georgetown, and you can really see that and experience that in those ball games.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, you talk about raising up in Iowa. A little bit more of your story. How did you end up in Austin, man?
Back in the mid-'90s, it was a job transfer for what I call my real career in the telemarketing field, telecommunications. And I had an opportunity to move here, which at the time my twin brother lived in South Austin, and had a chance to move in with him. And then over the years, just liked it down here, don't deal with winter that much. And then I moved up to the Georgetown area about 10 years ago when I got married, and just stayed around here as much as I can, and had the opportunity about 6 years ago to start working for the Statesman. But it was through career. My career brought me here, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else these days.
Yes, sir. Well, you've seen a lot. You talk about these kids, and I think it's something they're putting in the food nowadays. Boy, these kids are getting bigger and bigger. I told one of our guys, we were talking, David England, who does a lot of great work with Georgetown for us. He goes, Rob, I just think these kids are bigger this year. And I looked at him. I said, I think you're right. What changes have you seen, at the high school level, besides just the athletes getting bigger, Mark? You've seen so many games. You've seen so many coverage. What are some other characteristics, some other traits that you've seen as the years have went on here with our high school athletes?
Well, really, what I've seen is the evolution of the spread offense and the hurry-up offenses. Back when I first came to Austin, not many people were throwing the ball around, and I could probably count it on a couple hands or couple fingers. You had teams like Hayes running the wishbone all the time, Bowie, Westlake. Westlake threw the ball, but they were more a running team, and this is before Lake Travis and Coach Dykes came about when they were started throwing. But in the last 10 or 15 years, the advent of the spread offense, everyone seems to be running the spread around here except the few teams that run the slot T. And that makes a challenge covering the games because you have to be so quick. And no one's huddles anymore, so not a lot of time. And also these scores that they're putting up on a regular basis, it makes it entertaining for the fans. Probably a lot of headaches for defense coordinators.
Well, I heard this weekend Georgetown is going to face a triple threat or triple option offense, and so Coach was talking to us. Coach Griffin was talking about that, and he said that's very hard to try to figure out how to really maneuver that and manipulate that and work with that. But Mark, besides Georgetown, talk about some other teams that you've had the opportunity to cover throughout this area.
Haven't yet this year because I was off last week, but I do mostly the games in Williamson County because I live up north, so I get a lot of the Rouse, Leander, Weiss, Leander Glen, and when we get into the playoffs, maybe Hutto or Cedar Park, Vandergrift. So it's usually most of the teams up north, and like this week I'll be at the Westwood Hendrickson game on Friday night over at the field, see what 6A football is like for that district opener. So I'm pretty much your northern correspondent.
Yes, sir. Well, there's a lot of good folks, as you may have heard whenever you first came on the phone call here before we brought you in. We are surrounded by such amazing talent here in the Austin area. For us at SHN, I'm kind of a new kid on the block as far as covering sports, covering high school sports for the past 5 years. But guys such as yourself and all throughout the area have been so accommodating. You've helped us in tremendous ways that you don't even know about, Mark, and we really appreciate that because you bring a lot of value to the table for these kids. Especially for me broadcasting Georgetown, it was always and it continues to be a pleasure to see you up in those press boxes, Mark.
Well, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. And I always like forward talking to you, and especially if you're working a playoff beard or not.
Especially if we're up there yelling and screaming. Sometimes I feel like we may need to. I may need to bring earplugs for folks up there. We get a little, we get a little excited at some of those games, Mark.
That's true.
So, well, you're talking about covering other teams here in Central Texas coming up throughout Williamson County. Westwood has had some glimpses, but Eastview, man, that opening game for Eastview and Westwood, Eastview went into overtime. Kind of your thoughts on some of I know you haven't had a chance to really cover these teams, but some of your thoughts this year on what you may think may happen with some of these teams here in Williamson County.
Well, one of the things, and I was thinking about is Eastview was tri-champions of that district last year. And one of the things they have back is quarterback. Jackson Colson's a really good almost a 3-year starter now. So he always shows great poise in the pocket. I know they lost Zion Hester, but it looks like Coach Fickett in his first year is poised to repeat, which would be a great thing for Eastview in the district. And also, obviously, that's in Division II. And that district, you always have Brenham, who's a perennial favorite. And last year, Glenn surprised everyone in their first year. So I think it could come down to those three teams again for that district. Again, I know Glenn's off to a shaky start, but they've also played up on a couple games, including their first game against Liberty Hill. On the Division I, it's tough to pick against Cedar Park, Hutto, or Georgetown, and right now I wouldn't rest on Cedar Park, even though they lost to Vandergrift. They bounced back with a big victory last week against Cedar Ridge, so I would just take those three in Division I, and Maynard's coming on strong with Taj Brooks coming back. So,
well, you've got
that should be a good district.
Absolutely, and you've got coaches who historically have just been powerhouse type coaches. You mentioned Cedar Park, Carl Absek, who's been over there for a time, and he has really just shown the stamp of success in winning versus Cedar Park. I'm glad you brought them up because that team has been Georgetown, as I called it, their blister every year since we've been covering the Eagles on SHN. The last 2 years, Mark, of course, the Eagles had an opportunity. They were ahead, and in the second half, they fell behind and eventually lost both of those games where they were close. This season, though, Mark, I think Georgetown may have an edge. We'll just have to see how it plays out. Your thoughts on that matchup?
Well, it'll be interesting because by then, I think the Georgetown quarterback situation, they're playing basically two guys who really haven't got a lot of action. One's Darson Herman and Jordan Oldorp, and they both they interchange, and they both have different strengths. I would say Herman's a stronger runner, big 6'4" kid, and Oldorp is more of the thrower when they want to throw. So, and if R.J. Moreno could complement those quarterbacks' running styles. And then on the defense, I think where Georgetown really stands out is on the defensive side. Bell is a heck of a linebacker, and he leads the way. And they have a couple other studs, and right now I can't remember the name right off the top of my head. But I think they could probably go toe-to-toe defensively with them, even though Ryder Hernandez is a good quarterback for Cedar Park.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we had Taylor Bill as our SHN Sports Defensive Player of the Week for Georgetown on the Eagle Nation Coaches Show a little bit earlier tonight. And then we had R.J. Moreno. So you've named, the offense and the defense there. R.J. Has been effective. He had 60 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. But the Georgetown running game has been complemented this year by guys such as Edie, who has came on, and he also ran for about 62 last week. So, Mark, I still don't know, and as a Georgetown broadcaster, and, not to make it the SHN Gridiron Georgetown Eagle show, but I still don't know if Georgetown has really found their identity yet. And I think that we may see this dual threat quarterback situation all season long, which is something that Georgetown's not accustomed to. I cannot go back in any of my recollection from graduating from Georgetown all through now, which is, 17 years, 18 years, and ever remember a point that Georgetown played two quarterbacks consistently. You talk about Darson Herman at 6'4", only a sophomore. The future is bright for the Eagles with that young man.
Right, and he has some big footsteps to follow with his brother Chandler, who was a starting quarterback 4 or 5 years ago. But you're right. I mean, I've tried to rack my brain. When was Herman, and then there was Connor Bell and Jackson Siosen last year. So they've had some good quarterback play the last 4 or 5 years. And this is a different view of Georgetown, but I think it can be effective because it gives defenses something else to prepare for or think about that normally in the past they haven't had to deal with.
So, hey, Mark, this is Michael Francis. I got a question for you concerning the District 13-6A with the Round Rock schools, and you've got some LISD schools that are in that district as well. And as you mentioned, Vandergrift. So far, they played 2 games, and their defense has yet to give up a point. So can you elaborate on the strengths that you see in Vandergrift versus those high-powered Round Rock schools?
Well, the first thing I would go is straight to the defense. And I haven't seen them this year or even last year, but I know in the years past, Coach Sanders always preached defense. And this year, he's added his quarterbacks back, and that really helps him. I would think after last year, they ran the table, I believe, undefeated in the regular season, and they're poised to do it again. And I would say that's the team to beat. And then they'll have a good test with Cedar Ridge later in the season. But I think right now those 2 schools are the tops with, and it's kind of cliche, but everyone else trying to catch those 2. But Vandergrift, Coach Sanders does a great job fundamentally with them. And they have, even though the school hasn't been around that long, 10 years or so, they have built in a lot of tradition already, and it just keeps building.
Yeah, it really does. Coach Sanders has really established a quality program there in North Austin over in the Steiner Ranch area off of 2222. So he's got a good program going over there and has defeated Cedar Park the past 2 years. And Cedar Park's always, kind of in everybody's targets. My kids went to Rouse High School, and so Rouse, unfortunately, I don't think has ever beaten them on the football field.
No, and Rouse, I would love to see Rouse back in that competitive, and it seems like they've been down the last couple of years. Coach Mann hasn't had the success he's probably wanted the last couple of years, but I could see Rouse and that Leander school district, they put a lot of effort in and a lot of pride into their teams, as evidenced with Glenn's rise last year. I think Rouse can bounce back and help that 5A Division I out and be competitive with the Georgetown, Cedar Parks, and Huttos.
Well, there's always good football to be had in that district with those teams, and Rouse has had a history in the past, specifically the 2012 season when they went all the way to the state semifinals and faced a very tough Georgetown Eagle team at Gupton Stadium.
Right. I remember that. I wasn't writing then, but I remember being here, and as I said, that was right after I moved to Georgetown almost, and so I had a lot of eyes watching that game just to see what would happen, and then a few years later covering Georgetown Rouse games. That was really a privilege for me.
Well, Mark, we appreciate your time and appreciate your answering these questions, and appreciate all that you do for the North Williamson County area and in the Austin American-Statesman. We appreciate your fine work, and Rob and I are glad that you were able to call in and visit with us this evening.
No problem, Michael, and you guys do great work too, and I appreciate all the effort that you give and kudos that you give that local high school athletes. And now the college athletes in the area. So we really appreciate that as well. So
Thank
good
you,
luck
sir.
on the rest of the season. Talk to you down the road.
Yes, sir. Same to you, sir.
Awesome, Mark. We appreciate you, buddy. We'll see you around at Georgetown, man. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
All
Bye
right.
now.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. Well, once again, that was our friend, Mr. Mark Champ, over at the Austin American-Statesman. Michael, I always say, a lot of things that are repetitive. You know me. I say a lot of repetitive sayings, a lot of repetitive things. But we really are blessed with such great guys like Mark and others throughout the Austin area who I've said over and over again, who care about these kids. They have wonderful jobs, and they utilize these jobs to promote these kids and the athletes. And that's what we always do here on SHN. And it's so great to have to have that same culture that we have through SHN, to see that with so many of these other media guys here in the Austin area.
Right, and it permeates the whole Syntex area. You got a whole group of people that they want to showcase the local athletes and the local high school football programs and show that they're not second to anybody in the state, that football here in the Central Texas area can stand against any other metropolitan area, whether it's Dallas-Fort Worth, whether it's the Houston area, San Antonio, El Paso. They can match with any program.
Well, Michael, as we continue to just look at some teams here, let's go back and look at last week. We'll have Carl Schoening on here in just a little bit, but kind of wanted to go back to last week first, and then we'll bring Carl on and we'll preview some of these upcoming games. Carl's going to be on the call for 2 games. He'll be doing color tomorrow night for Austin ISD, and then the play-by-play for Georgetown down in South San, as I will be on up to Grand Forks. I'm going to try to bring some cool air back to us, Michael.
Yeah, please do. Bring some more rain.
But going back to last week, we'll quickly go over some scores, specifically here in the Austin area. Cedar Park over Cedar Ridge, 26-14. Critical game for Cedar Park because Cedar Ridge, once again, looking like a powerhouse team. Cedar Park, after falling that opener to Vandergrift, rebounded. Then they take care of business versus Cedar Ridge. That's a critical game because Cedar Ridge had all the makings of another deep run here in the postseason this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've got an outstanding running back in Deuce Vaughn over at Cedar Ridge, and what a great program that they've become. One of the premier schools in the Round Rock Independent School District. Them and Round Rock right now, the front runners with Stony Point, probably looking real close behind them in powering through that district. It's a tough district, and at the head of it you've got Vandergrift that has just stepped up and has really taken over District 13 6A. So Cedar Park fell to Vandergrift in week 1. And then they bounced back against Cedar Ridge, and the Black Rain defense did its job against a very, very tough 13-6A opponent in the Cedar Ridge Raiders.
Yeah, and we continue to look down. Anderson defeating Rouse last week 14-13. That's in your backyard. Rouse, this season, they may have their work cut out for them, but don't discredit Anderson. The Trojans have came out early, and they're firing on all cylinders right now. We opened up the season here on SHN with the Taco Shack Bowl, and Anderson really took control in that game, Michael.
Well, you got a great quarterback in Carson Gross, and he was phenomenal in the Taco Shack Bowl. First 3 passes he threw were for touchdowns, and then he comes and plays against an 11-5A opponent in the Rouse Raiders at AC Bible Stadium, and Rouse holds their own on that one. They only lose by 1 point to the 6A Anderson Trojans. So, Rouse is playing some tough non-district games and look to turn the corner and make a run in the District 11 5A. These games really don't count at this point until you get into district. So you may go into District 0-3, and you may be able to run the table in district because you're playing tough quality opponents and sharpening your skills prior to getting into the district contests. So and now with the expanded teams that they take in, when I was in high school, you only took 2 out of a district. Now they take 4. So if you can make a good run in district and get some good luck against other teams, and get those wins, you can easily find your way into the playoffs.
We'll glance over some other scores from last week. Westlake 35, Cy Ranch 7. Hayes, a 1-point advantage over Dripping Springs, 22-21. Hutto, and this was one that we can chat a little bit about. It was a turnaround season for the Hutto Hippos versus the Liberty Hill Panthers over in 4A. You'll remember last year, that game went into overtime, Hutto on the winning edge. This past Friday, though, Hutto took care of business easily versus the Panthers in that game at Liberty Hill, 42-14. This is a Hutto Hippo team that is poised yet again to make a deep run this year if they can just get over that first couple of little goofs they had in the playoffs last year where they were expected to go deep and didn't really do much in the playoffs. This is a different Hippo this year.
Well, their defense is much improved this year, and it showed against Liberty Hill. You got Lawrence Willua that is anchoring that defensive line and doing a great job for the Hippos. They go to Liberty Hill and they dominate Liberty Hill, and they limit their rushing attack, I believe, to 34 yards in the first half alone, and then just controlled the tempo of the game from there. But Liberty Hill, predominantly, they just run the ball. They have that wing T offense that they just ground and pound and run people over, and they put up gaudy rushing numbers in the game. And so last year, Hutto was not used to seeing a wing T offense, and this year they were prepared for it, and so they took care of Liberty Hill.
You know, and coming up here is the El Paso Del Valle will be at Hutto. Of course, our thoughts and prayers remain with those friends there in El Paso for the tragedy that happened here just not too long ago. And Hutto is going to honor those students in that community. I think that's going to be really nice. We talked about it in the Georgetown Eagle Nation Coaches Show earlier, talking more about there's much more than just the game of football. It's about character development, building character, and Georgetown does that. Hutto is doing a great job honoring these kiddos from El Paso. We'll talk about that after we talk to Carl a little bit later here in this show. Looking at some other scores, you keep going down. Westwood edges Austin 41-39. So the Westwood team this year, they may be slowing their roll just a little bit as they struggled against Eastview. Even though it went into overtime, I'll call that a struggle. It was a tough battle for them, and Eastview was able to hold on and secure that victory in overtime. Again, Westwood over Austin 41-39. Lake Travis taking care of business over Mansfield Timberview, that on the road 48-26. Of course, Georgetown, we talked about earlier, at Waco 35-7. Rudder edges Elgin 43-42. Not enough sauce in the hot sausage there. Not enough spice in the hot sausage for Elgin. But I love that community. I love those kids, and I love what they've done over the years. And so that's what happened there. And we've seen a lot with Elgin, of course, being friends in the district and a team that you've been around. I've been around quite a bit.
Right, and that's a district opponent for Eastview. And, I mean, they only lost by 1 point. They're 0-2 so far on the season. But you can't look past these guys. They only lost by 1. And you can look forward to them being a tough out in district play.
One of the things I'm noticing, Michael, too, is especially here in week 2, not a lot of blowout scores. You look at the margin for Hutto and Liberty Hill, you could consider that one a pretty big margin. The 35-7 rout that Georgetown had over Waco, that one a big margin. But as you continue to look at previous games, Canyon Lake only 1 point over Weiss, 21-20. Eastview, 41-35 over a very good New Braunfels Canyon team that we saw last week. And then Jarrell, that was a good game, a good opportunity for the Cougars to get back to a win. They needed a win. Wally Harmon was on that call. Not only did they get the win, they got a convincing win over the Florence Buffaloes, 41-14. They were on the road for that game. The Cougs took care of business. You know Took was happy back in Jarrell, buddy.
Took was happy, and Took would tell you Took was happy. And, Wally Harmon does the play-by-play on that Jarrell Cougar broadcast, and they had a 45-minute stoppage during that game. And Jarrell stayed focused and came back and secured the victory.
And then we look at one final score on our sheet, at least from teams that we look a lot at. Mason over Johnson City, 2-0, the lone safety there. The old punchers punching their ticket on a victory 2-0. You don't see that often, Michael.
No, you don't. You talk about a defensive slugfest on that game right there, and Mason usually has some very high-powered offense and 2-0 score. You don't see that very often. That may be one of the lowest scores, and or at least ties the lowest scores that you've ever seen in high school football.
Yeah, and you talk about a game where it's obvious the defenses played very well. The offenses didn't have much rhythm in any of those games. You got a 2-0 score. That's the way it goes, man.
That's the way it goes. Marble Falls, the week prior, they lost 7-0. So there was another defensive slugfest that went on right there, and Marble Falls being another opponent for the Eastview Patriots. In fact, they'll be their first district game, and that game will take place in Marble Falls.
Well, again, our SHN Sports Player of the Week presented by Georgetown Jewelry went to Ty Pruitt of the Cedar Creek Eagles versus Aikens, 19 of 32, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns over the air, 1 rushing touchdown. He was simply on fire. It was up between him and Makai Kimball there at Hutto, and ultimately we had to go with Cedar Creek because of the first-time 2-0 record and the work that young man. Both of them great, but this week it went over to Ty Pruitt.
I mean, Makai Kimball is what he is, and he's going to get that award. It's just a matter of time, and he would have deserved it had he gotten it last week or this week. It's gonna come to him. He's a great athlete and a great asset for Hippo Nation.
Well, as we continue SHN Gridiron here live from the Georgetown Jewelry Broadcast Studio, true honor, joy, and privilege to bring on one of my best friends and co-owner of SHN Sports, Carl Schoening. Carl, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, Michael and Rob, I'm doing pretty good. How are y'all?
Doing well, Carl.
Doing better. You were up at the studio about half the day today, Carl. Tell us what was going on, man. Some exciting stuff that you've been working on.
Oh, yeah. You know, as a Texas State alum and as we enter a new head coaching era with Jake Spavital, a former linebacker at Texas State, Mike Arakpo, and the Austin American-Statesman beat writer, Kef Chardella, they wanted to start a podcast, and they reached out to SHN to, produce a high-quality product and distribute the RSS feed and, post it on the YouTube. So I came in and helped them out, and it's 3 Texas State alums producing a pretty popular podcast through the first couple episodes. And Mike lives up in Cedar Park area, so I went ahead and said, hey, we have a pretty nice studio. You guys want to record using that? So, we knocked out a few episodes today, and the first of which was a University of Wyoming versus Texas State recap, as the Bobcats lost last weekend. And, tomorrow there's going to be a general sports topic show released, and then Friday we'll have a Texas State versus SMU podcast. So, keep an eye out. That'll obviously all be a video release on SHN, but, we step into the world of podcasting, and we also have the podcast available wherever podcasts can be heard, Spotify, Apple, Google, I believe even iHeartRadio. So, it's the 5th quarter with Rack and Kef.
Man,
so, it's a fun thing that we got going on at SHN.
Well, Carl, appreciate all that. Bringing these guys on. I had a chance to chat with them a little bit after the show today. Just you hear it in their voices. Great guys, and so we're excited to have them. And Carl, this season we've been tremendously blessed and bringing on network partners. Talk a little bit about how valuable those network partners are to us here at SHN. Friends such as Joey Snowden with the Malakoff Tiger Sports Network, and then Freddie Greer with Mejia Sports Broadcast Network, bringing on North Forney this year, and even all the way in Raleigh, North Carolina, Trevor Beard up in Portland, Oregon. These network partners are so valuable to what we do, Carl, and now bringing statewide coverage, particularly here on SHN. It's been exciting, man.
Yeah, when you and I started the endeavor of SHN Sports, our main goal was to make it simple for schools to broadcast their events and create archives of what these young men are doing, which will be, highlights of their lifetimes. They'll always be able to remember that, I played football or I played a particular sport, whatever that might be. These, student athletes really do deserve some kind of archive of that event, whether it be a video, audio-only broadcast or, whatever the case might be, pictures, just a video-only broadcast is even possible. So you and I first started off keeping things pretty simple, and the main thing we realized was that these schools have other opportunities to spend money in other places where it might be needed, and it shouldn't cost, an arm and a leg to do that. So I think you and I have set up a very easy platform that really does make broadcasting easy for pretty much anybody. And, we have that broadcast in a box, and if you go ahead and buy a broadcast in a box, you can produce archives of any events, whether it be a coach's show or your football games, your JV games. You can do sub-varsity events, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever it might be. Just buying that broadcast in a box one time and maybe finding a few volunteers makes it very easy for schools to produce those archives that we were discussing. Even if it's not something that gets posted to SHN's page, if it's something that just goes ahead and is just a private private data that's shared among the parents and family members and students, athletes involved, then I think we've done good, and that's the main thing that I think SHN really does is we want to empower these organizations to be able to promote their students if they want, but also we're thinking about the father that's on the road and can't catch the Friday night game, or the grandparents that live in another state, or 5 years down the road, assuming YouTube will be around. We're pretty sure YouTube will be around.
Hopefully.
The people who are just like, yeah, we hope so too. But 5 years down the road, we're hoping that that we're pretty sure that there will be that Georgetown Eagle. And it's just like, yeah, you remember when I had that game-winning touchdown in the fourth quarter and took it 28 yards and juked out a couple players. That's still on. That's still on YouTube. If not, I'm sure. They something like that might actually require like downloading the actual file and having it for personal reasons. But that's the main thing. We want to make sure that these are always accessible and easy to share, and we do it in, I think, a fashion that really is top notch too. Like if you look at some of our stuff, I would say that we're comparable to ESPN quality for internet streaming.
Yeah, well, Carl, appreciate you. We met years ago. Consider you one of my best friends, man. And you said it right on the money. It's all about empowering these schools and organizations to promote their student athletes. With that being said, you've been on the call on a couple of games. Coming up here, you'll be doing color with Steven tomorrow, and then on the play-by-play call for Georgetown. How excited are you about that? We've had a great relationship with AISD, and then, of course, Georgetown with Eastview and Jarrell, our three founding schools. Talk about those a little bit and how excited you are about this year's high school football, man.
Oh, yeah. Football season's always a good time. I certainly enjoy it. Those Austin ISD games of the week are nice because you get to see a new team every week, and there's some interesting storylines that always come into it as opposed to following the same storyline of one team. You get to, just kind of catch these teams at glimpses, and we get to provide these live broadcasts because of UIL rules. We can't do live video on Friday nights, but obviously, these Thursday night games, they're good opportunities for players to get exposed on a live stage. And I think those are fun things like that. And tomorrow we get to see Lanier versus Eastside Memorial. I think that'll be a fun matchup as both teams are looking for their first win here on week 3 of the season. And both teams have not necessarily had close matchups their first couple games of the season. So I think both of them are going to come out with some very strong emotions. And, then, of course, always Georgetown High School is the flagship school, the first school that we ever broadcast for on SHN. And it's always a good opportunity it's always a good time to have an opportunity to see the Eagles play.
Hey, well, Carl, even though this is Wednesday, Gridiron talking a lot about high school football. You've had the opportunity to work with Southwestern. Man, you guys had to work through some crazy circumstances, but Southwestern, what a gem that we have with those guys. And For the travel I heard was a little rough, but overall, man, a great call with Southwestern there at Sewanee. Talk a little bit about that, man. It was a good start for the Pirates this season.
Yeah, we had to get what was the exact trip? I'm pretty sure I spent about 30-something hours on either a car, a plane, or a bus this past weekend because we had to make it all the way up to the mountains of Tennessee. So it was definitely a trek. We left from Georgetown to go to the Austin airport, flew from Austin to Atlanta. From Atlanta, we bussed 2.5 hours to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and then we stayed the night in Chattanooga. And then Sewanee, which is really kind of a blip on the map, high in the mountains of Tennessee, that was another 2-hour drive. Or excuse me, that wasn't 2 hours. That was about an hour drive to the game because it was all uphill for the buses. And then on the way back, it was all downhill. So they had to kind of make sure they monitored their speed as well. I don't think we were able to really go much faster than 45 down the mountains because of speed regulations for our size of the bus. And other than that, it was a very good win. Sewanee is a historic program. They're one of the original SEC schools. They had their glory heydays back in 1891, and they're not a bad team. They're a team that I imagine will probably win 5 to 6 games this year. We'll have to see how it all gets said and done, but this Southwestern team looks really good on defense. They have 3 quarterbacks, and all 3 of them got a chance to play, and I really don't think any one of them was head and shoulders better than the other, and that was in a good way for Southwestern because those 3 guys all look like they're pretty good. Landon Gilpin, Coleman Kerr, and their starter, Austin Emery. So all 3 of those guys had drives that scored. And, yeah, Southwestern and Joe Austin are in for a fun season, and I think that by the end of the season they'll be ranked somewhere in the top 25.
Awesome, man. Well, you'll be on a few more of those calls and, of course, covering some games throughout Central Texas and just excited, man. Real quick, Carl, before we let you go, that matchup coming up with South San, the Eagles looking to go to 3-0. As I said in the Eagle Nation Coaches Show, Georgetown has went 2-0 the last 9 seasons, so winning is a tradition here in Georgetown. You got to be excited to head down to South San Antonio. This is a much improved Bobcat team, though.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that the Eagles will really want to take a look at is how have they improved, and maybe not get too high on themselves because that's probably the constant battle for some of these adult coaches is dealing with perhaps potential inflated egos of younger gentlemen because there's ups and downs in life, and if you all of a sudden have a couple up weeks and you want to make sure that they don't get too swaggered up in a way because you can be in for a heavy fall if all of a sudden you get down 2 or 3 touchdowns. It's nothing insurmountable, but you don't want to go into somebody else's house, maybe underestimate an opponent, get hit in the mouth, and not be able to recover from it. So, I'm sure these Eagles, they know how to stay humble and be ready for everybody as if it's a playoff game. But, at the end of the day, that's just something where there's always ways to improve, especially in the game of football with how many moving parts there are. And it'll be a good test for them before they head into district play.
Okay, I got a question for you, Carl. So,
Go ahead, Michael.
So your dad is a very talented play-by-play guy for the San Antonio Spurs, was for the Texas Longhorns, but he's also a talented musician and singer-songwriter. So,
goodness, is he paying you to say this?
No, I've heard him. I've actually heard some of his music. But anyway, talk about the influence that he's had on your life and your pursuits as a broadcaster. And also maybe some of the differences between you two, and maybe some of your hobbies, such as your photography and your new toy that you've recently acquired.
Well, my dad taught me at a young age, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think there's a proof somewhere along the way that I think somewhere in second grade, they had little things like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that was when I kind of sat down and said, I could be a sports broadcaster when I grow up. I don't think I ever had any illusions of being 7 foot and being able to play basketball professionally. I know some kids maybe didn't give up on that dream, unfortunately, until after college when they realized, that they wouldn't necessarily have the NBA calling. But it's one of those things where I kind of knew that I loved sports, but I wasn't necessarily going to be a great athlete, even though I was only like 8 years old. And that was the beginning of it. And, my dad always encouraged me to pursue it in smart ways, such as, going to Texas State, where there were opportunities to work at the campus radio station, and obviously giving me some feedback every now and again, and not being 100% easy on me, in the sense that he would give me harsh critiques, maybe not harsh critiques, but constructive criticism that really took the broadcasting abilities to the next level. And he's very much interested in being in music, and I always joke that if he ever got a residency at the Driscoll Inn, that might end him as a Spurs broadcaster. But it's a fun passion of his, and my mom doesn't really let him do anything in the summer when the Spurs are in their off season. So he basically just kind of turns into a bit of a singer-songwriter musician, and he sings at the local church that he goes to, and he's in that band. So I think he really enjoys that aspect of being creative in a musical way. And and I'm on the other side of it, where I enjoy the digital stuff. So, there's obviously SHN has sort of become a very fun thing with me. Like I was talking about, I'm just recording the podcast for the fifth quarter. I'm not an authority on Texas State, so I don't feel comfortable talking about the Bobcats in terms of producing solid content. But I really do enjoy the ways of cutting up the video and, going into the Adobe Creative Cloud and, things like shooting football games and taking pictures and those kind of things. I think are, I've really enjoyed finding out a lot about photography and videography and all kinds of things that come with just being a media member and, trying to spread the good word of sports, if you will.
Well, Carl, we've got a lot lined up, this season. Excited about the opportunities. Really looking forward to your call on Friday for the Eagles. Any final shout-outs, man, before we let you get some rest? You've been going all day, man.
Oh, yeah, shout out to you guys. You guys do a good job every week on this show, and I know it's a good little preview for everybody to get excited before SHN really kicks it off. And then it's 4 straight days of football: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and obviously Monday too, if you count the NFL games. So, which you absolutely should, even though it's only one. Same thing with high school. There's going to be a couple played in our area, and keep an eye on the ISD Thursday night game of the week. I'll be on with Stephen Strong tomorrow, and I'll be with David England when the Eagles travel to South San. But the SHN network, we're growing, and we're definitely happy to have everybody involved, and we can't wait to see how high we can take this organization.
Awesome. Well, Carl, appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us tonight, and of course, we'll have you in studio one of these Wednesdays for sure, man. But the keys always here to the door. So come on, brother, and have fun. We appreciate all you do, man. We couldn't do SHN, of course, without you and the vision and really, Carl, and I say this publicly, the motivation that you've put in me, because you've helped me realize things that I haven't realized, Carl. So I appreciate that, and it's definitely made an impact on guys like Michael, David England, and so we're just going to keep on rolling and keep on taking care of kids, man. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, you guys have a good rest of the show. I'll talk to y'all later.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, awesome. Yeah, like I was saying, man, Carl has just been a tremendous impact for me personally, as a friend, and just motivating me especially with the broadcast in a box idea, because I thought, man, this is a lot of work. I don't know if it's going to work. And then Carl just kept pushing me. And the more that he talked to guys in the radio industry that saw it, and now for me as a Division I broadcaster, not knocking other groups or other guys, but I go in and I see how they're setting up this equipment, and I'm like, man, this is why we invented the broadcast in a box.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Carl he's one of those individuals that he every time you talk to him, he's always positive, but he's always realistic. He doesn't give you advice just based on emotion and just to make you feel good. He's always realistic and just takes an outside the box kind of look at things. So he's always pleasant. I always enjoy being around him. He's got great wit and he's got good insight, good insight as well.
Well, as we look ahead to upcoming games, time now 9:52. We'll sign off here in just a little bit. Got some good games. I was sitting here real quick because my ADD was kicking in, and we have so much fun back here at this green screen. And, I bought, back in the day when we got all this going, Michael, I had bought some green screen tape. And that we've had a lot of fun, over here throughout the first couple of weeks and just enjoying what we're doing. And, if I take it off, of course, that's what it looks like. And, here's the tape. So you just think, my goodness, the possibilities are endless. It's like a little kid back at Christmas, man. So, you just take a little bit of tape and put it on your forehead there, and all of a sudden you can see right through your head, man. Now you can, now you can see my thoughts, Michael.
Right.
So I don't know what's in here, guys, but there's something going on in here tonight.
Yeah, wait till next week when I wear my green SHN shirt, right?
We'll have a floating head around here. Well, hey, let's preview some of these upcoming games. The recently renamed schools there in Austin, of course, Juan Navarro. That used to be the former Lanier facing Eastside. That over at Nelson. We'll have that game on SHN Sports. You'll be on that game. Is that no? It's Eastside Memorial.
It's Eastside Memorial.
It's Eastside Memorial. Beg your pardon. I was talking about Eastview at the now Northeast Early College, which was Reagan.
Right.
So a little bit of confusion there, but
that one right there.
Yeah. So Navarro, the former Lanier, will be at Eastside. That over at Nelson Field. That is the game that Carl Schoening will be color commentating with Steven Stunn on the call. So we're excited about that. You can catch that game tomorrow right here on the SHN Sports Broadcast Network, 7:30 kickoff, as we look at other teams in this area. Leander, 0-2. And you feel for Leander under brand-new head coach Chris Price. This Leander team, though, looks like they've got a little more get up in their step. They just haven't been able to find a win column yet, Michael.
It's just a matter of turning that corner and getting the players to believe in and buy into Coach Price's philosophy and just make that turn. But he's in a tough district. He's in District 13 6A, and so it's a tough out or a tough road in that district. You're playing against some quality opposition. And talking about that district, you look at Vandergrift versus Cedar Ridge tomorrow night or Friday night. Wow, that's Cedar Ridge coming off the loss to Cedar Park, and Vandergrift having not given up a point through 2 games so far.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, their defense is definitely killing it. And our good friend Snoop Daniel over FanStan, they talk a lot about they call it Vandy Perf.
Vandy Perf.
And I think it may be it's Vandy Perf right now through 2 games for sure. Other games on the SHN Sports Broadcast Network coming up this weekend. Eastview at Northeast. That was formerly Reagan. They will play at Nelson. That's where the confusion was. My goodness, that is confusion. That's on Friday night. You'll be on that call alongside Travis Banks. Talk a little bit about that one, Michael.
Well, that's going to be Northeast. They're 0-2 so far on the season. They've taken some tough hits and have had some high scores run up against them. But Eastview doesn't need to look past Northeast, and they need to stay focused. And I'm sure that Coach Fekoch will keep them focused, and we can expect a good game out of Jackson Colson, out of their dual running backs, both in Marion Brooks and Isaiah Quentin Jackson back there. And then their receiving core, you got Charles Ross and the other cast of crew. So it's going to be a very good game for Eastview as long as they stay focused. So you just can't look past them to Marble Falls, which will be the next game for them.
Well, we talked about also the El Paso Del Valle, which will be at Hutto, and that it should be just a very, very good game for Hutto. And I was just looking at some of the other, news wires coming across. We heard from Todd Robinson, the voice of the Hutto Hippos. Hutto fans encouraged to sit on the visitor's side during the football game against El Paso Del Valle. I think that is so awesome, man. Again, honoring those folks there in Del Valle, Michael.
Yeah, that's cool, and it's good to see people reach out and want to do that and embrace the El Paso community and getting the opportunity to come to the Austin, Central Texas area. They were played up in Frisco versus Plano last week. And so now they're coming down here to Hutto, and we're going to reach out and wrap our arms around them and love them through the tragedy that happened in El Paso just a couple of weeks ago.
And this idea, Hutto has their coaches shows on Mondays. They utilize the SHN Sports Broadcast in a Box. Todd Robinson actually said that, and I was reading here off of KView, but Todd said this on the coaches show Monday. You could go back and see that coaches show right here on SHN Sports. Todd, of course, the director of communications, made a comment during the coaches show. They have that over at the Hippo Cafe where the coaches and players are interviewed every Monday. Coach, he was talking to Coach LaPlante, and he said, I'm just going to throw this out there. If Friday night, if we look across the other side and there's nobody singing on the other side, because I just can't imagine a lot of folks are going to be able to make that trip from El Paso, I would encourage some of our Hutto fans to maybe go sit on that other side just at El Paso. Feels like there's some folks that are behind them. Dude, that just touches me, man.
That's a great idea. And, I think it'd be even cool, too, if they just happened to wear the colors of that team, just to kind of show some support around there.
Yeah, I think it's just something that's awesome. And Todd, again, appreciate all that you do. So that will be a great game there for Hutto. And you talk about the travel distance from El Paso to Hutto. I mean, 9 hours from here to Georgetown. So about 9-hour drive. That is a pretty incredible
a long drive.
Georgetown, we've talked about them a lot. We'll be at South Sand Bobcats. Georgetown 2-0, trying to go a perfect 3. Trying to go Georgetown Perf. You like that, Vandy Perf? G-Town Perf.
Georgetown Perf.
GT Perf.
Well, y'all aren't going to be alone in San Antonio. You're going to have a district rival down there as well. Cedar Park will be playing San Antonio Central across town from y'all. So that's going to be an opportunity for some Central Texas teams to go down there and show just how well they can play against some of those powerful San Antonio schools.
Well, that should be a good one. And then finally wrapping up on the SHN Sports Network, Gerald will be at Riesel. Wally Harmon will be on that call. Gerald looking to get over 500. They're at 1-1 right now after the victory versus Florence. A great opportunity for the Cougars. Riesel, a very tough team, though. We'll see how Gerald responds. You know that team as you covered them in the past, and I think Gerald's got just a good opportunity here to really put some momentum behind these kids. As Coach Amos Davidson has said all season, he said, really, it's up to these kids. They've got to believe. They've got to think. They've got to win. That's just not coach speak. That's the truth. And they've got to believe, and they've got it.
Absolutely.
So, Michael, we'll see what happens on that one as well.
Sure will, but we definitely need Stephen Strong to get over there and mow Coach Davidson's yard and help them out over there. And so Coach Davidson will have all his strength ready to go for the team and be able to coach another victory for the Gerald Cougars.
Hey, we had some texts coming in earlier. If you were on that first show or second show, we have not forgot about you on those T-shirts. We'll get them over to you. Make sure, friends, on Friday night that you tag us on social media with hashtag SHN Football Friday. That show's starting to gain a little bit of momentum now. But Steven Stunn, Justin Simmons co-hosting SHN Football Friday, really working hard here, 5 hours every night. We bumped it up to 7 just to give a little bit more time there for them to get here from Austin. You're still not going to miss a beat. So every Friday from 7 p.m. to midnight, you can tag your content on social media. Check in with those guys as they will be talking about all the action all over Central Texas. Not just Georgetown, not just Eastview, not just SHN schools, but the entire area. You'll have those scoreboard updates every 15 minutes from Grand Endeavor Homes. A great opportunity there. For now, though, we're going to take a very quick break. We'll thank some of our sponsors. We'll come back with our closing thoughts. This is SHN Gridiron from the Georgetown Jewelry Broadcast Studio. We'll be right back here in just a few moments.
2019 high school football on SHN Sports is proudly presented by Georgetown Jewelry. Georgetown Jewelry is your trusted local jewelry store, family owned and operated since 2013. Whether you desire a one-of-a-kind custom piece or want to enjoy browsing our inventory of both unique and traditional jewelry and watches, stop by and see us at Georgetown Jewelry. We also specialize in jewelry repair and appraisals. For more information, please visit Georgetown Jewelry, located in the Williamsburg Village Shopping Center in Georgetown, or online at georgetownjewelry.com. Central Texas High School football on SHN Sports is made possible by Georgetown and Austin Shirt Company. 3 words describe Georgetown and Austin Shirt Company: simple, reliable, and awesome. We support our community. From screen printing and embroidery to promotional products, Georgetown and Austin Shirt Company helps put your brand on your business. Get started on your project today by getting a quick and easy quote online at georgetownshirtcompany.com. Jimmy Jacobs' reputation for building beautiful custom homes in Central Texas speaks for itself. For over 30 years, he has been behind some of the most successful and sought-after new home developments in Georgetown. Grand Endeavor Homes represents a new era of elegant custom home building. Now joined by his son, Justin Jacobs, Jimmy has launched Grand Endeavor Homes to continue his legacy and reputation for custom homes in Georgetown and the surrounding areas. Visit GrandEndeavorHomes.com for details and directions to the model home.
Welcome back. Closing remarks here, SHN Gridiron on a Wednesday night. Boy, it's so nice to be here in the Georgetown Jewelry Broadcast Studio. Very thankful for this facility. You know, Michael, I made a very faith-based decision last year in August. I stepped out on faith. I said, I'm getting out of IT to pursue broadcasting full-time. And, maybe on the making a living end, it hasn't panned out yet, but I'll tell you what, it is awesome every day to be able to get up and know, such as helmets like these, that we're able to promote these kids, and that's what it's all about, man. And I know that if we continue on this journey, that good things are going to happen, and it's all about these kids and even these goats right here. The old goats every once in a while. We picked that up at St. Edward's, and he's our buddy now. He hangs out with us.
Yep.
Except he brought a couple of Georgetown baseball playoff losses, and so sorry, buddy, because you're going to be out of here. Actually, now, poor goat.
Poor goat.
Oh, Michael, your final thoughts, though, before we wrap it up tonight, buddy. It's been a fun one.
It's been a fun one, and looking forward to some great games this coming Friday. It's going to be an exciting weekend, and a lot of these teams are about to start their district runs, and 13-6A starts this week. I believe 25-6A may be starting theirs as well. And 11-5A, they're another week out, and poor goat.
Just looking at the goat, sorry.
And 13-5A D2 will start in a couple of weeks. I believe that in 13-5A that every team has a bye the same exact week, so they'll have a down week, and then they'll begin the district run. So looking forward to some great rivalry, Texas high school football in the Austin Central Texas area, Rob, and glad to be a part of it with SHN Sports and the fine folks that belong to this fine organization.
Well, you bet, man, and I'm looking forward, to these games that are coming up with you and Travis. I'll be up, as I talked about earlier. I will be up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, a little Bearcat action as they take on Grand Forks, North Dakota, a little Bearcat action as Sam Houston State will take on North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks, man. So, I'm going to miss being at Georgetown, though. It's always my privilege to be at Georgetown, and I do get a little bit sad whenever I can't broadcast my Eagles. But I'm very thankful for the opportunity, to be part of Bearcat Nation there, and excited about y'all's call coming up, Michael, as we take one last look here. Is
At
that
the
goat
goat.
right there? And I'm talking about the goat, Michael, and then there he goes. That's the rest of the story tonight.
He won't cost Georgetown any more baseball games.
Well, friends, as always, thank you for joining us here on SHN Gridiron. We will continue to work hard every week to bring you the absolute best coverage where we can. We promise to have more guests on the show, more visitors. We're going to talk to students as this season goes on. Friends, we got a lot of football left. We're only coming up on week 3. You still got 7 games left, and then after that it's the playoff run. We'll be here all 18 weeks. I'll tell you this, too. This year, SHN, we're going to try to get credentials up to AT&T Stadium. And so, SHN may send a few guys up there, and we'll even have some state coverage. How does that sound,
Oh,
Michael?
yeah, that'll be cool. We'll have our Gridiron broadcast from Jerry World.
I think we'll try to do
There
that.
you go.
I think it'd be great, man. So, well, as always, we appreciate you, friends. Those of you that did text message regarding shirts, yes, we haven't forgot about you, though. We will get them to you. If you would like a shirt, join us on Football Friday, SHN Football Friday. Stephen Stunn, Justin Simmons may give away a few of those. We got a lot of them left. Again, tag your content. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button probably somewhere along here on your video screen. Somewhere, down in here, Michael, is what I would say. So make sure to hit that button. Keep up to date with the latest here on SHN Sports, where it's always our true joy, honor, and privilege to bring you high school football coverage here. Also, keep up with our friends over at FanStan. They do it like nobody else. We love them. We love what Snoop and Casey and those guys do. So thank you to you guys for covering them. You care about them just as much as we do. We love our media partners. We love what you do. From the Georgetown Jewelry Broadcast Studio, from Michael Francis, I'm Rob Hipp. Thanks again to our special guest, Mark Champ, as well as Carl Schoening. Join us calling in tonight. We'll be on the air tomorrow night as we continue coverage here. High school football. It's Navarro versus Eastside at Nelson Field. Stephen Strong, Carl Schoening on the call. Join him at 7:20. Kickoff 7:30. And then, baby, it's Friday Night Lights, and we will also roll on Saturday with Southwestern. We have a lot in store, and we are excited. Friends, as I end every broadcast, especially today, I didn't want to leave this out. Today, of course, September the 11th, a very trying day for a lot of folks. 18 years ago, our country faced a tragedy that we have seen like none other. I tell you this, there's not a day that goes by that I haven't forgot about that day and where I was. And that's why my message tonight is so important, that we're not strong enough alone to make it our own. Friends, we truly need each other. Provide a word of encouragement. Lend a hand of support. Somebody out there tonight, especially tonight, needs you. Good night, and God bless from the Georgetown Jewelry Broadcast Studio. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We'll have our Gridiron broadcast from Jerry World.
I think we'll try to do that. Yeah, I think it'd be great, man. So, well, as always.
Jimmy Jacobs' reputation for building beautiful custom homes in Central Texas speaks for itself. For over 30 years, he has been behind some of the most successful and sought-after new home developments in Georgetown. Grand Endeavor Homes represents a new era of elegant custom home building. Now joined by his son, Justin Jacobs, Jimmy has launched Grand Endeavor Homes to continue his legacy and reputation for custom homes in Georgetown and the surrounding areas. Visit GrandEndeavorHomes.com for details and directions to the model home.